Hello, I want to talk today about a new beginning, a woman's journey through a midlife crisis. So I'm going to set the stage here. It's often said that life doesn't come with a manual. And for Sarah, a 45-year-old woman navigating the chaos of a midlife crisis, this could not have been truer. Sarah lived a relatively comfortable life, married for 20 years with two children in high school and a modest but stable job as an administrative assistant. She always prided herself on being a good wife and a good mother. But everything changed in an instant when her husband John walked out one quiet evening, leaving her reeling, heartbroken, and unsure of how to move forward. As the days passed, Sarah found herself not only grieving for the end of her marriage, but also facing a harsh financial reality. Her steady income wasn't enough to cover the bills without John's contribution. Suddenly, she was thrust into the unfamiliar world of single motherhood, with no clear path forward and no one to turn to. What do you do when everything you've known falls apart? John's departure was the catalyst for Sarah's midlife crisis. After years of feeling like she had her life figured out, she found herself facing the unthinkable. It wasn't just the shock of being left behind after all these years, but it was the realization that her entire identity had been wrapped up in her role as a wife and a mother. The first few weeks were but a blur. Sarah was unable to stop crying, consumed by grief and a deep sense of betrayal. The financial strain was immediate. Sarah had never been in charge of the household finances. She had been relying on John's steady job to provide for the family. Now she had to face the cold truth. Her paycheck wasn't enough to cover their bills, and the little savings they had was quickly depleting. The guilt was overwhelming. How could she provide for her children? How could she rebuild her life, let alone support two teenagers through this painful transition? As the days turned into weeks, Sarah was caught in a whirlwind of emotion, anger, confusion, and fear. She didn't recognize herself anymore. She had spent years putting her family first, neglecting her own needs, hopes, and dreams. And now she was alone emotionally and financially. Her sense of identity had been shattered. Who was she now that she wasn't someone else's wife? Was she still capable, confident woman that she once had been? Or had the years been taking care of others left her too broken to rebuild? Her children were still grappling with the pain of their father's absence, began to show signs of stress. Sarah, desperate to keep them grounded, tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but deep down she was struggling to keep it all together. The guilt of not being able to give them the life they once had weighed heavily on her. Her job, which had once felt like a safe and predictable environment, now seemed very limiting. She realized that her career had never truly been her passion. She had stayed in the same role because it was secure, because it allowed her to support her family. But now, with her world turned upside down, she wondered if it wasn't time to reinvent herself, if she could even do that at her age. So Sarah began to piece her life back together. She embarked on a journey of self-discovery, one that was painful as it was transformative. First, she sought therapy, something she had never considered before. But talking to a professional helped her to understand the depth of her pain, and slowly she began to untangle the emotions that kept her stuck. Through therapy, Sarah started to see the roots of her struggles. She had spent so much time focusing on others that she had neglected her own needs and desires. Next, she found herself reaching out to old friends, women she had lost touch with over the years. These friendships, once secondary to her role as a wife and a mother, became lifelines. They offered her the encouragement, the validation, and support she so desperately needed. It was in these conversations that Sarah began to remember parts of herself she had long forgotten: her wit, her creativity, and her love for painting. As she started to discover her passion, Sarah also explored new opportunities for work. She took on freelance writing projects in her spare time, something she always dreamed of but had never dared to pursue. Although the pay was very modest at first, the sense of accomplishment and the purpose it gave her was invaluable. Through this exploration, Sarah realized that her identity wasn't tied to being a wife or a mother alone. She could be so much more than that, even in the midst of her pain and uncertainty. It was not easy, but with time, she began to see the possibility of a new chapter in her life, one that was just all of her own. Months passed, and while Sarah was far from having it all figured out, she found herself in a new place, both emotionally and mentally. The pain of John's abandonment still lingered, but it no longer defined her. She had come to accept that life was not a straight path. The detours, the failures, and the unexpected turns were part of the journey. Her finances were still tight, and she was working hard to make ends meet. But she felt a newfound sense of agency. For the first time in years, she was making decisions for herself. Her children, too, were starting to adjust. Though the pain of their father's departure was still raw, they could see the strength in their mother, and it gave them hope. Sarah's transformation wasn't just about an external change, it was about internal growth. She no longer measured her worth based on the roles that she played for others. She was learning to love and care for herself in ways that she had never done before. And as she did, she discovered that her life could be just as meaningful and fulfilling without the marriage she had once relied on for her security. As Sarah looked back upon the period of her life, she realized that her midlife crisis had been a blessing and a curse. It had forced her to confront the reality of her own vulnerabilities, but it also had given her the opportunity to rebuild herself. Now at 47, Sarah stood at the precipice of a new beginning. She wasn't the same woman she had been before her marriage ended. She was stronger, more self-aware, and more capable than she had ever imagined. She still faced challenges ahead, but she knew she could face them on her own terms. Sarah's journey wasn't easy and it wasn't linear, but it was hers. And as she looked ahead, she understood that midlife, through a time of crisis, could also be a time of profound transformation. Life often throws us unexpected challenges, but it's through these moments that we have the chance to rediscover who we truly are. No matter where you are in life, it's never too late to take control of your future and create the life that you deserve. If you're going through a midlife crisis, please go to my website at mammothedge.com and take the life assessment. I would love to talk to you and support you as you rebuild your brand new life. Thank you.